All right, we are back at the ending portion of today's Kings in Classroom event with some questions from the audience that we're excited to answer. Again, I'm Robert Hendricks, the founder and chief executive officer, and I'm joined.
I am Janelle Engram, the Chief Impact Officer here at He Is Me. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Before we get to the question, I want to give a special thank you to the Leadership Brainery for offering this amazing space to do this event today. So I have some questions from the audience across social media, some folks here live in this room with us. So let's jump in, Janelle, see what we can answer together.
Okay.
First question, why focus on Black males and not other populations? Why focus on Black males and not other populations? Any thoughts?
That's a great question. And I think there's been kind of like a trend today in the conversation thinking about the need in education at large and kind of like the work that's still to be done as it relates to, teacher diversification. And so when we think about why Black male teachers, that's our part of the work. It's not the only part of the work. There's many other facets and just stakeholders in that work as we think about the greater, population of teachers and the teacher workforce in general. But that's kind of where He Is Me really kind of digs in support of the less than 2% of teachers that are Black males.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So that's first part of the answer is that's what we focus on. And there's a need for Black male teachers because they're not represented and what they bring to the table is not represented. And there's another piece of the conversation, which is the impact of Black male teachers.
Right.
So it's not enough to say we have more Black male teachers because they aren't present, but when students have Black male teachers, they actually do better academically. If all student populations, not just the Black boys, you name a student group, they probably do better when they have a Black male teacher. So it's really beyond because they're Black males, it's more about the impact that they have as Black males.
I like that.
Yeah. So now I'm gonna go back to you to answer this question first. How does your experience help shape your work at He Is Me?
Whoa, well, do I have the long answer version? Time for the long answer version?
Medium.
Or the short answer? Okay. My experience, I think, has had a lot to do with my work at He Is Me, down to really my experience as a student, right? And starting off in spaces that did feel really affirming as a student and being in school settings that didn't feel really affirming as a student. And so really kind of having those polar opposite experiences within my own experience was really telling about what just education looked like at a large level. I didn't graduate high school with the best connection to education, right? I definitely didn't see myself stepping into education as an educator. And a lot of the reason for that was because of an experience that really didn't show me that teaching or education was a pathway for me. When I was in elementary school, I had a lot of Black teachers, but that was it. And as I continued through my journey, I saw like year after year, the just sheer number of Black teachers that I had kind of dwindled to when I was a senior, I didn't have any. And so I went into college really thinking like, not only is education not for me as like a pathway, is this really something I want to do in terms of, do I want to go to college and continue my career or my education? But to kind of fast forward through my college experience, I graduated, I needed a job, and I stumbled into an opportunity at my former elementary school, the school that I did feel really connected to and supported by, in the space that did have a lot of Black staff that supported me in my journey. And so I kind of raced there. I was excited to take on that opportunity and caught the teaching bug and been in it ever since.
That's how they get you.
That's how they get you, right? They give you the parent role, they give you the entry level, and it's, it's, downhill from there, uphill, I guess I should say. And so my work with He Is Me really is kind of spearheaded by that experience and then my experience as an educator, right? I got into these spaces so excited to inspire other Black kids to want to do the same thing. And I get there and like, nobody wants to be a teacher. They look at me like I'm crazy because I'm in education. And so I'm like, whoa, we got some work to do. It's not enough to just have the representation, right? There's a whole ecosystem that needs to exist for, specifically Black students to be interested in this career path. I was able to see a lot more of like my Black female students have some, interest maybe in that direction once I've been able to build relationships with them. But in those spaces, I didn't have a lot of Black staff counterparts to do the same work with the Black boys. And so really thinking about why He Is Me specifically, I do strongly believe in the need to increase representation, especially of Black males in education. As a student, as an educator, I've seen firsthand what the void is. I've seen firsthand what the impact is. And so, yeah, there's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it really started from my career. It wasn't something I was thinking about when I was growing up as being a teacher. I actually thought it was funny. My mom used to say I was going to be an educator, and I'm like, yeah, okay.
Right.
And it was when I graduated and started studying education. When I went back to my high school, I told one of my teachers I was studying education, and she thought I was joking because I just didn't seem like the route that I would take at the time. But when I did get into education, so I'm jumping way ahead from me working in a school, it didn't take too long to see that the same problems that I had in school were still happening. And that was mind-boggling almost, because at that point, I've been out of school for, I don't know, 7, 8 years. And now I'm working here and it's the same problem in a whole new city in a whole different landscape, but it looks the same. And it's something that I had figured out. Obviously, I graduated high school, went on to college, but a lot of people don't have that same path. And that's not the only path, but if that's the route you want to take, how is school not the place for that to happen, particularly for Black boys?
Right.
So as an educator working in a school building, I also noticed that the way I felt like I was being viewed and treated is the same way that our students are being viewed and treated.
Right.
I was having a conversation earlier where it's like we fall into two extremes. If something isn't something we do as Black males, and I say that as students or the adults in the building, if we don't do something that is 100% aligned to the way things used to be or the way things usually are, it's either this person is so incompetent, they don't deserve this job, they don't deserve this role, or they're trying to sabotage. They're trying to undo the whole school, and that's not necessarily always a bad thing. But nonetheless, there's not a lot of space for, let me help this Black man out. Let me support this young Black boy in this decision that he made. And that's also assuming that the decision needs some kind of correcting or, redirection. So for me, He Is Me is an opportunity to start really, really early to tell Black boys that school is a space that welcomes you, first of all. It's not even, the first conversation is not about being a teacher, it's about being welcome in a space that you're gonna come to for 13 years, for 6, 7, 8 hours a day. You have to feel welcome in that environment first. And then fast forward to the Black males who are working there, they also have to feel welcome in that space. And I actually get this from you, Janelle, the teachers and the administrators in the building have the choice to leave, right? The kids don't, they have to be there. So we have to make that a space for them. And so the Black male teachers, they do leave because they don't have to be there. They don't have to put up with the things that we face. So how can we make it a space that they stay? And this is something from Devin, who just was here having a conversation. You got to start with retention. We're going to have a revolving door of recruitment if that is what's first. So how do we keep the Black males that we have in the building first? so that they can create an environment for the Black boys to feel welcome and then for all the students to be successful. And then you have a pathway for those kids to want to be teachers. Education has a really unfair advantage over other professions because we get to be in front of the next generation of professionals every single day. The kids should be clawing at the door to be a teacher because we get a head start.
Right.
We can make it the environment that they want to be in and they'll come.
And some kids are.
Some kids are, right.
Based on their experience.
Right, it's their experience. And when you ask just about anybody why they do whatever they're doing in their lives, in their career, it's something about an experience that they had.
Right.
And why they're not doing certain things, probably because of an experience that they had. So we can just be smarter about the time we have with our kids.
Well said.
All right, I'm gonna move on to another question. Where do you see He Is Me in 3 years? Will it and should it always exist? I can start that question.
Okay, good.
I'll answer the second question first. No, this should not always exist.
Okay.
He Is Me is really solving problems that shouldn't be the case. We talk about the mentorship that we do. We talk about supporting Black males to become and remain teachers. But what we're really doing is building the infrastructure for a pathway. We heard from Superintendent Stiles earlier. As long as he continues on that strategic plan, get the right people on board, do all the things that he set out to do, we don't need He Is Me. The infrastructure is there. He has the pipeline, he has the systems, he has the programs. Now all they have to do is just keep it up.
Right.
So we can get into more spaces and help build these pathways, these collective strategies. Then we don't need to be present. If we are still around in 100 years, it means something's not landing with people.
Yeah.
And then maybe that's something we need to do differently, or maybe it's something other folks need to do, but He Is Me should not exist in our society.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I would say one thing I double down on is in the same capacity, right? Like He Is Me doesn't exist in the same capacity. Maybe our role in the work shifts
right.
At some point in the future, as we progress, as we continue to support pathways be established and sustain themselves over time. Yeah, I'd be curious to see like what our role develops into in that work to keep it going.
I want to answer the first part of that question really briefly. It was where do we see ourselves in 3 years as an organization?
Okay, yeah.
And my quick answer is to whoever asked that question, working with you.
Good answer.
We need to be working in every community when we have places that are ready. And I say ready, meaning really willing and have the capacity to invest in what it takes. We hear a lot of times, and we see a lot of programs where they're reaching out for the 21, 22, 23-year-old Black male who just got this degree last week and saying, hey, come teach. So after they've gone through college, a lot of times accumulating debt, and that's a whole other conversation. Then we say, come to a job where you may be underappreciated. You may not have had a good experience for your 13 years. You may not get paid a lot, but we need the diversity. So come teach. So that to me is a place that's not ready. What I tell districts, and you've heard me have this conversation, if you want to have an I Am King program, for example, you need to see the boys in your program as the teachers at your school in 10 or 15 years. That's where the recruitment starts. It's not the person who just got their math degree from a local college. At that point, a lot of times they've already made up their mind because they've had these experiences in schools. So in 3 years, we need to be in spaces who are ready to invest that long-term investment that it really takes to change the education system in the way that we're trying to.
Only thing I would add to that is across the pathway, right? Is just being able to establish those connections. We talk about Dr. King's legacy and just this idea of collaboration, right? And being able to, have pathways available for Black males across the country is what it's going to take. So in the next 3 years, really expanding the model that we have across the country, working with you. If you're the person who asked that question, I'm gonna write that down. Because that's the right answer, right? That's the goal, and that is, how we approach the work is fully through collaboration.
Well, Janelle, I think you just put your foot in your mouth on this one. I have a follow-up to that from someone else out there. Are there any plans for partnership with orgs not directly in classrooms? And they gave the example of a juvenile justice program. So how can we expand our work outside of the school and the college?
It's a good question. I'm not gonna get too detailed into the what that could look like. I think when we think about partnerships and collaboration, there's so many ways it could look depending on the stakeholder, depending on the part of the work that organization kind of offers and supports. The one seed I'll plant is in thinking about how we want to really leverage networking, especially in these next few months, as we launch our community networks. And so the person who asked that question, I hope, would join our online community networks as a first step to really learning more about what our partnership model looks like, about learning more about what it looks like to partner with us, regardless of what type of organization you represent, whether it be directly in the education setting or a little bit outside of that. We need people to support in a lot of different capacities when we think about this work. And so I'm glad that somebody who's not necessarily in education is thinking about how to partner with us, because that's all part of it. And like I said, I don't have the specific example of what that would look like, but it looks like us kind of meeting and collaborating and figuring it out together. And that's the beautiful part about it.
Yeah, and if you think about it from a conceptual lens, if you've ever seen us at a career fair or anything like that, we have this 7-foot banner. This one out here now, it says Discover Teaching.
Right.
That's the point. For those younger ages of Black boys, is for them to realize, I could be a teacher. I think it was Dr. Travis earlier that was mentioning that someone is saying, like, when you leave a school, like planting those seeds early, and you can do that from anywhere.
Right.
So it can be a community center who has access to Black boys. I mean, that's a lot of Black boys you find there, a lot of Black men you see working and volunteering in those spaces. We can definitely leverage all of these opportunities to access Black males and have them just try it.
Right.
Just test it out. And that's the basis really of our programs. Some programs out there, when you sign up, you're like committing multiple years of your time or your career. And we intentionally don't do that because we want it to be organic. Most Black males who teach, myself included, we fall into it. I didn't think I was going to be a teacher. I had an opportunity to be a mentor and I took it. And then you start to see the impact. And then you're like, there's something to this. It's something I'm providing that I was missing. And that's how we get into it. So we just need to open up the door. So to answer that question directly, we are very open to working with non-schools.
Right.
We've had some of those conversations with non-schools. I know you've had some of those conversations with some organizations as well.
Yeah, especially like you said, the community-based organization, the spaces that serve you. Yeah.
So many questions. I don't think we can get through all of them. So I'll ask this one. How can we make education as a profession more appealing?
Ask myself that every day. There's a lot that could be said about making education more appealing. I won't go with the kind of, I guess, obvious answer around increased representation for students, although I do strongly believe wholeheartedly that that's a part of it. I think support is a part of it, right? Like when we are thinking about recruitment, we have to also be thinking about retention and ultimately retirement, right? What are the benefits in the education landscape? What does access to those, spaces look like for various stakeholders? And so I think to make it more attractive, especially when we think about our youth, as the next generation to really engage in this work, it's very multifaceted, right? It's about what they see directly in front of them. It's about how they experience education directly. It's about how they're supported as students. It's literally about how they see their teachers treated.
Really?
Right. And so again, it's a conversation that includes so many different voices, so many different kind of leaders to come together to think about what is the experience that specifically people of color, if we want to, zoom into our work of working with Black men specifically, it's ecosystem, right? It's all encompassing as it relates to folks' experiences and how you perceive the experience of those people in those places. And really, working with entities to improve the standards in those spaces.
Yeah. For the sake of time, I'm not going to answer that question.
Okay.
I'm going to ask another question for me to answer, and then we're going to close out with one final one. So a question I see here are, what are the top 3 strategic priorities for He Is Me growth that require financial resources? So fantastic question. I won't break it down to 3, but I would say on a high level, what's really important to the way that we structure our work is to make it a light lift for everybody else. So I mentioned that we come in to build these pipelines, build these pathways in collaboration with folks. And you and I were both working at schools. We both were school leaders, we both were teachers, and we know how much work it is to be in that space. So a lot of our financial resources goes to building systems. You mentioned a online platform that we're working on, the curriculum, the trainings. We coordinate the meetings between like superintendents and the colleges. So a lot of our finances, our financial capacity goes towards building the entire infrastructure so that when we do talk to a principal or a superintendent or a college student, they can just walk in and go and not have to think about what's my lesson plan going to be, or where am I going to get my college student from. We try to eliminate that as much as possible, and a lot of our finances frankly goes towards that. And the other piece will be the community aspect. Now, part of what makes it difficult or a challenge for Black males to remain teachers is that feeling of isolation. And although they may still be physically isolated, if one thing that the past few years taught us is that we can be together apart. So we try to create that community as well. So our college students here and our college students in Middletown can start to feel like, I'm not going into this profession by myself, although you're 700, 800 miles away. So the last question I have for both of us is one final message, whether you want to clear up a misconception about He Is Me or one takeaway you want people to have, they could share it with somebody else. What would that thing be?
I like that question. Without saying too much, I would want to keep it pretty high level in folks' understanding of our work and how we approach our work, as viewing us very much as partners in the work of creating pathways, partners that facilitate spaces and provide resources, but really empower our partners to be able to lead these initiatives in a way that's sustainable. So I'll leave it at that.
That's sort of my answer.
Okay.
I don't think what makes He Is Me powerful is having the name He Is Me all over the place. If you are a school district, and into your comments about partnership, if you're a school district who is leveraging our resources, we want you to make them your own in a way. We have what we actually provide you is what it is, but how you implement it is how you implement it. We don't need you to throw He Is Me. In fact, we want you to take more ownership over what we are providing you. We're helping you understand it and helping you think about operationally what it looks like. But to Superintendent Styles, we want his families to feel like that's a Middletown program. Like, yes, they're leveraging our resources, but you know, if you go to a math class, you don't think about who wrote the book, the textbook. It's just math class, you know, at this school with this teacher in this classroom, and it's the same thing. We don't, it's not about he is me, it's about what the resources are providing.
Amen.
Yeah. So I'm gonna end that. Thank you, Janelle, and thank you to
Rob.
everyone out
been
there who submitted questions. There are still more here. If you do have any more questions that you didn't get to share with us, social media, email, hello@heisme.org. There's a lot of ways that you can reach us, and we'll be happy to talk.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.